All right, guys, so I'm here in the Philippines, and today we are going to talk about, as the title suggests, why Thailand's YouTubers are coming to the Philippines. And so basically there are four groups with a fifth bonus one that I'm going to talk to you about. But four major groups of people that were in Thailand, that were YouTubers and that were coming to the Philippines. We're going to jump into it right now with the first group, which is going to be people that had a connection to the Philippines, and the Philippines was their ultimate destination, and they happened to be hanging out in Thailand or in Thailand at the time. So some of those groups were basically expats who had lived in the Philippines. These were mostly small YouTubers, under 20,000 subscribers, that they had been doing YouTube in the Philippines. They were living as expats in the Philippines, but when the world shut down, their 3 years was up and they had to leave. If they didn't leave, they had to hope and pray that the Philippines was going to have some sort of an amnesty. But most of these folks did the right thing. They didn't take the chance to find out if they were going to get forgiven after the fact. They obeyed the law, they exited the Philippines, and some of them for almost 2 years had been adrift. They didn't go back to their home countries, and they were, going from different countries. One channel that was a vanguard coming back into the Philippines was one called the Hey Vern Travels channel. And he was an expat here. By the way, I do not know him. He probably doesn't know I exist. The only reason I know anything about him is because a friend of mine who is a YouTuber named Chris Forte is also a friend of his. So when it was announced that the Philippines was open, I knew he had been adrift because I'd watched a few of his channel episodes because he was going the same places I was, Serbia and Albania and Thailand. And he was hanging out in Thailand waiting for it to open. And he came back the very first day on February 15th when the Philippines opened. And so I watched that journey, as well as a lot of us who, again, our ultimate destination was to come to the Philippines because of our connection. And we got to see that, how it was open so suddenly that he ended up even getting quarantined, which was sad because although he met all the requirements, apparently the country that he had gotten his jab in was not on the approved list, even though the one that he got was approved. So he ended up quarantined. And we got to see kind of how that show played out as the Philippines was kind of figuring out how everything worked with that. So that was the first group. I'm going to show you around just a little bit of this coffee shop that I'm in. It's a co-working coffee shop. It's kind of neat. Just a little bit of footage here. And we'll go on to number two. So the second reason that people are coming from Thailand to the Philippines has to do with visas. And there's basically two categories of that. This is kind of a much longer subject, so I have to go into some background on it. But for the last 2 years, once the world closed down, Thailand did the right thing. And there were people that were in Thailand that were trapped there. They couldn't go back to their home countries. Some of them, think of Australia, they wouldn't allow their own citizens in some cases to come back. And so flights weren't available, people couldn't go home because of the situation, so Thailand introduced what was called an amnesty program. And basically every 60 days they allowed people that were there on tourist visas to renew for 1,900 baht, so about 60 bucks. And they could stay an additional 60 days and they would just have to say that it was related to the, the worldwide situation that was going on. And that was continually expanded over and over again. Many times towards the end, the last probably 6 or 8 months, people were being told that it's not going to keep being extended because it had to be renewed through an emergency act basically every 2 months for that to be extended. And so what happened starting in February and March of this year was the country was starting to open back up. They had done the Thai pass, and there was a lot of speculation that it wasn't going to be allowed anymore. And so in February and March, this amnesty visa, depending upon where you were at in Thailand, some places simply were not allowing it to be renewed. Some places were giving you the 60 days no matter what. Some places were only giving you 45 days. Some places were only giving a 30-day extension. So it was completely discretionary, and it depended on what branch you were going to. Then when the March renewal came and they extended it again until May, a lot of the places were still, again, freely giving it, but they were telling people this is going to be your last time. This is the last time you can get it. That was happening in Chiang Mai. They were still getting the 60 days, but it was only getting, they were being told it was the last time. And in some places, they started actually requiring you to show that you couldn't go home, that you had to produce a letter from your embassy saying that you couldn't return. You had to prove that there weren't flights available. It wasn't just, due to the situation anymore. You had to actually, in some cases, show that you had some outbound tickets. Now, again, this got renewed again. It wasn't expected to be, but it got renewed again until July. We'll see what happens then. But a lot of these folks who were doing YouTube did not want to take the chance that they were going to get denied those visas and have, 5, 7, 10 days to exit the country and have to spend a lot of money on an emergency ticket. So a lot of them decided to go ahead, exit while they could, because they had been basically milking these amnesty visas for a very, very long time. Sometimes 18 months, 19 months in some cases, and they knew that was going to come to an end, so they wanted to leave on their terms voluntarily. Many of them had built up really good, solid YouTube channels in Thailand. We're talking 30, 40,000 subscribers to where they had started their YouTube channel there. And they really didn't want to leave because they were making a good living in Thailand. And so 2 couple vloggers basically ended up in the Philippines about the same time. And they got here, and it's so funny. In one of the videos, you watch it, it's like they're showing a happy face and everything, but they really, really want to be back in Thailand. That had become their home. It had become their living. It was in their comfort zone. And then something amazing happened to these folks, and their channels blew up. So, the Philippines was the next one, the closest on the list. They had planned in some cases just to go straight back to Thailand as soon as they could, but their channels started blowing up. They started getting a lot of views, much more so than they had in Thailand. And their channel growth and the amount of views, and of course the amount of money that followed with it, made a lot of them stay. So some of those are still here to this day, even the ones that had come back in March and April. And I don't know if they have any plans of going back or not now that they've built these big channels here. So that was that group that was coming. Again, that was it was all based on that amnesty visa, and it was time for that to be up. They had to go somewhere. Some of them went to Vietnam, some of them went to Cambodia. Once people started seeing what was happening in the Philippines to these channels, then we get to the 3rd category of people that were coming. So this 3rd category is still dealing with a visa issue. It's just a different type of visa issue. So back during, these people are actually Thailand YouTubers. They're not travel YouTubers as much. Some of them, they had left very early. They didn't come to the Philippines. Many of them had left back in December and January, and they had gone back to the United States. Some of them had gone back to Europe. Some of them had just gone to some other countries. I think even Australia, some of them that I had seen went to. And so they had done that, they had left, then they came back in on tourist visas, got those extended again, so anywhere from 60 days to 45 plus 30 days, depending on the type of visa that they were on and what country they came from. And so they were leaving. In fact, a huge YouTuber was on the plane right next to me when I was coming over from Thailand to the Philippines, and they're all doing it for the same reason. They're making visa runs. So their home, their business is now in Thailand as far as YouTube, and they come to the Philippines and they stay for 2 weeks. They go ahead and do some YouTube filming here, so sometimes you'll see up to 10 videos, and they're still making YouTube videos, but they're not coming here to be a YouTuber in the Philippines, so to speak. They're just doing their visa hop and then they're back in, and it works out really good for them. They are able to continue to get views because the same crowd that they normally get on their YouTube channel is also interested in other places in Southeast Asia, so it's a really good blend for them. And then they go back and they're going to do it for 60 to 90 days back in Thailand until they either get their long-term situation re-ironed out in these times, or they'll just make another hop somewhere else and again go back. The Philippines is just a logical place for a lot of those to go because they can continue to make money, they continue to produce content that their viewers like, and then they can go back to where their home base is, which is in Thailand. And finally, you've got real YouTube travel channels that were coming from Thailand to the Philippines. And these are people that have travel channels. They're going from one country to another country to another country, and they're not staying in one place and making an expat channel. They're a travel channel. And so basically they had gone to Thailand because it had opened up with the Thai Pass. And it's just coincidental that by the time it had opened up with the Thai Pass and they had spent, 60 to 90 days in Thailand, it was time to move on to the next country. And the Philippines was a logical choice. If you're a travel channel, you come in here for a month to 90 days, you make your travel videos, going to Cebu, going to Bohol, going to Manila, going to the outer lying islands, do your stuff here, and then you move on. And some of them have gone on now to Turkey. I think at least 2 of them have gone on to Turkey. But they came to the Philippines because they're travel vloggers. The Philippines was finally open. It was time to come here. It's the next logical step once it had opened up. And so they're moving on to the next country, and then they'll move on to the next one. And now for the big bonus, which is kind of a 5th category, I guess. So after a lot of these couple vloggers came over and people they were associated with back in Thailand saw that their channels were blowing up, a lot of people decided, hey, we can go there and we can get a lot of views on YouTube and make a lot of money, get a lot more subscribers, and then perhaps continue their journey on elsewhere, I assume, or go back to Thailand. And that's just the truth. I mean, when you look at the amount of views that people are getting in Thailand, they built channels over a year. And they're averaging, 20,000, 30,000 views and, excuse me, 30 or 40,000 subscribers. That's great. They built that up. They've got that audience. It's a very loyal audience, but they see these people who come and, after a month being in the Philippines, they blow up, they gain another 30 or 40,000 subscribers and they get hundreds of thousands of views. So if you're getting 30,000 average and all of a sudden you're getting 100 to 200,000 views, the amount of money that those people can make, and again, these people do this for a living. It's not a hobby like my channel, but they do it for a living. They can come in, they can grow their channels, they perceive they can grow their channels, and they can make money. So that's why a lot of them are coming after they saw the success. Now, there is a fly in that ointment for folks. If you are under 100,000 subscribers when you come to the Philippines, and you come here and you blow up and you want to be a travel channel, what's going to happen when you go on to your next country, which is Greece or Turkey or Serbia or wherever, you're going to find that a lot of those subscribers that joined your channel are interested in seeing Philippines content. They're not necessarily interested in you going to Corfu, Greece. And so when YouTube pushes your videos out when you go to these other countries, especially if you were a small channel when you came here, those people aren't going to watch. And then YouTube's going to think that nobody's interested in your channel anymore and you're going to stop growing. You'll still have some of your hardcore people that will be watching, but the views, even if you can replicate the views for a while, you're not going to be able to continue to grow if you've expanded with all of those subscribers. It's kind of a curse to many YouTubers with small channels when they do that. Now, my channel's not a Philippines channel. It's not really a travel channel. It's just my goofy life traveling the globe, which now happens to be home based in the Philippines. So, if I have growth here, that's fine because this is going to be where most of my content's produced. And as long as people are interested in what I'm doing, that's great. I'm having a good time doing it. This is a hobby for me. It's helping me learn to work with the camera. It's helping me learn to do videography, to do camera work and stuff, which is, it's a hobby. And and I get to share it with you guys here. So guys, if you like this, go ahead and subscribe, give it a thumbs up so other people can find it. And that's the lowdown as far as why the YouTubers in Thailand are coming to the Philippines. And by the way, as far as a knowledge base of why I know this stuff, when I was in Chiang Mai, there was a ton of YouTubers they had like converged on Chiang Mai. I was running into people that I had watched years ago. you know, I'd be in immigration and the person in front of me, I would be hearing exactly what their visa they were on because they were talking to the immigration person and I was right behind them. And so I'd find out they were on these amnesty visas when I was doing my 90-day reports and stuff. And so they've now come on, many of them, to the Philippines, so I know what visas they were on and I know why they were leaving. And in addition, again, I've talked to some others, not good friends with them or anything like that, that were at the airport when I was coming. There was 2 there at the airport, 1 on the plane with me. And you know, that was it. You know, in that case, it was a hop to come over for a couple of weeks to reset the visa and head back to Thailand. And then again, I had followed a couple of the vanguard that came in the early days when the Philippines had reopened to see what their process was. And their channels had always been very open about it. Their ultimate goal was to get to the Philippines. They wanted to be a Philippine channel. They wanted to live in the Philippines. So that's where my knowledge base is. And that's it. I'll see y'all in the next one. Hold that thought. I have a favor to ask of you, if you can. So I am going to put a card at the end of this video that basically will redirect you to another video of mine. You don't have to watch the video. You don't even have to click on it. I'm not asking that. That's not what the favor is. So the option is that I can allow YouTube to choose what video is best for you. And I won't know what that is. I'll never know. But if you guys could leave me a comment down below to let me know what the video was that YouTube recommended, and then just, would that have been a useful video for you? Was it something you'd already watched? I'm very curious to see how smart the YouTube algorithm is in determining what's right for you as an individual viewer. I have my own thoughts on that, but I want to find out. And if you'll give me that data, I'll compile that data from the comments and stuff, and from the algorithm or the numbers that I see on the back end, and I'll report back to you what I found out there if y'all are interested in that kind of stuff. But it'd really help me out if you could do that. Thanks a lot, guys.